Madam
Good to see
Chair.
you.
So
Good to
yes, you
see
do
all
have.
of you as well. Thank you.
And Sharon, did we begin recording?
Yes.
Okay,
All
so you
right,
can begin your meeting, sir.
thank you. This is a meeting of the Policy Committee of the Social Equity Council. Calling the meeting to order at this point. It is 10:04 current time, and I will let me call the roll. We have Mr. Jefferson is here.
Present, yeah.
I know that Councilwoman Naeem is not going to join us. Councilwoman Gordon.
Not on.
Let's see, we have myself and Councilman, who just joined? Councilman Watkins?
Walton.
Walton, I'm sorry.
Walton, Walton.
Thank you very
Walton.
much.
Yeah, and I'm present. Thank you,
welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Welcome. And we also have, of course, Director Clay is with us, as well as our chairwoman, Andrea Comer, present. Are there other council members on the call? All right.
I don't see any others.
So we'll begin with the review of the March minutes.
Vera's just joining.
Who was just joining?
Councilwoman
Suvira.
Gordon.
Oh, okay, I see.
Councilwoman Gordon. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Shirley, Chairman Shirley, just our staff attorney, Komla Matreve, is on as well.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Attorney Matreve is with us.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
So shall we take a moment to review the March minutes? And if so, I'll take a motion, please, to approve them.
I'll move it.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And are there any questions, corrections, or additions? So it's been properly moved and seconded that the minutes be accepted. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thank you. So the
I'm gonna abstain, Chairman Shirley. I was not at the March meeting. This is Suvira.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Suvira. We have one abstention. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the definition of ownership and control. And this is an issue that we have that will lay the groundwork for the succeeding discussion. So I'd ask Attorney Matreve if he will what's our definition of ownership and control.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. Thank you, everyone. So the definition of ownership and control has already been reviewed by the council. It was also incorporated in the review package that Kuhn Resnick has proposed and definitely adopted by the council meeting. I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see what it shows in the document that they are using to review the application. It has the full definition of ownership and control.
Okay.
So on my screen, you can see this document. I will zoom. So on this document, ownership and control, ownership means ownership stake means the possession of equity in the capital, shares, stocks, asset, or profit held in a cannabis business by a social equity applicant. And control, it means that the social equity applicant exercises operational authority over daily affairs of the business, has the voting power to direct the management, agent, and policies, and receive the beneficial interest of the business. So this is the definition that Kohn Resnick has proposed to the council at their last meeting. It was part of the package, which was adopted by the full council. Now, this is part of the overall criteria for the determination of the social equity status for the applicant. So,
Right.
anybody has any question on this?
Any questions, concerns, or about that definition? And I think as we go forward, we will see that we'll make reference to that from time to time. So the next item is the reconsideration, SEC reconsideration of the vote to remove the tax return requirement for non-SEA backers of social equity applicants. And under that, we have a review of Attorney Matrevi's memo, and also an input from Director Marriott. Director Marriott was not able to join us today, but we did have a conversation with him on yesterday, along with a discussion with Kohn Resnick, which we can share. But the first item is the review of Attorney Matrevi's memo, which I think all of the council members received. Is that right, Attorney Matrevi?
Actually, we have not shared with all the council members yet at this point. Yep. But this memo is just an emphasis on some of the points that were already discussed at the last council meetings. We were able to put it in writing so that to present to this committee again to answer for the question. I understand Council Member Walton was now part of some of the discussion that preceded the previous council meeting. So this will also give him the opportunity to weigh in. And then after that, we will distribute, if the committee so desire, to all the other members. So
before you start, I guess might be helpful if I were to just remind particularly Councilman Walton, who wasn't there, what had happened. We had
I wasn't here either, Chairman Shirley. I was not present either, so I would appreciate an overview as well.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just correction, Councilman Walton was there. He just abstained from the vote.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that, Councilman Jefferson. So certain council members have received complaints that they were unable, that social equity applicants, that the applicants were unable to secure investors, secure backers, because of the requirement that they provide 3 years of federal tax returns. And as you recall, we had a discussion of that at our last committee meeting. And in that meeting, we we weighed the pros and cons of the inclusion of federal tax returns and I guess, the relevance of including them with regard to what our responsibility was as a social equity council. Excuse me, council. What would that information provide us, and would it help us determine eligibility of social equity applicants? And we weighed the pros and cons. We came to the conclusion that that information was not necessarily relevant to what our span of responsibility was. And so, given that it appeared to be an impediment to our social equity applicants getting investors and backers, we thought we would bring it before the council, the full council, to have it removed as a requirement. We, as you may recall, those of you who were at the meeting, we brought it before the council. The council voted to keep it in. They voted not to have it removed. And so in subsequent discussions, and that's the purpose of this meeting, one of the purposes of this meeting, we felt that perhaps the import of the impediment to getting investors was such that perhaps we might want to have the full council, give the full council more time to reconsider that vote. And so the purpose of this meeting, the reason this is on the agenda is to, and please add or correct if I'm wrong, Director Clay or Chairman Comer, if the purpose of this meeting is to determine whether we feel it is prudent to bring it before the council, the full council, for reconsideration. And given that, as sort of a backdrop, Attorney Matravy did give us prepared a memo with regard to reconsideration and for us to think about. So please, Attorney Matravy, if you will.
Thank you, Chairman Shirley. So, like the good chairman just put it out, subsequent to the vote at the council meeting, few council members have reached out and asked for another presentation for the reasons why the backer should not be required to submit their tax returns. And some of those reasons have led us to basically prepare a memo to explain this, which will be emailed to all of the members of the council, of course. Some of these reasons are as follow. Currently, the criteria established by the Social Equity Council does not explore the viability of a cannabis business. What I mean by viability is that the Social Equity Council is not determining whether one applicant is more likely to succeed in a cannabis enterprise than another applicant based on the circumstances, the financial circumstances of that applicant's business. So the criteria we are considering are three main criteria: residency of the social equity applicant, income of the social equity applicant, and ownership and control. The ownership, 65% ownership of the social equity applicant, and the control that the social equity applicant has in the business. Those are the criteria that are being considered. Those criteria, seen as such, do not require that the council verify the total income of the backer, because the backer, as defined in the Public Act, is simply someone who has 5% or more interest in the business. The maximum will be 35% or more in the business. Those are the individuals who are specifically called backer in the Public Act, Section 22. So whenever we consider that definition and we consider the criteria, the way it was established, and the guidelines that was put out by the Social Equity Council, any information relating to the backer's income, source of income, does not help the Social Equity Council to determine that the social equity applicant is qualified indeed as a social equity applicant. It simply does not. And knowing how the backer makes their money does not provide the Social Equity Council with the information that's needed to determine whether or not the social equity applicant has control of the business structure. So that's one of the reasons why the backer tax return simply will not help the Social Equity Council. Another reason why the backer tax return will not help the Social Equity Council is that I just spoke about the definition of the backer under the Public Act 21-1. The backer is an individual, not a business, an individual that owns 5% or more, the cap being at 35%. That's the backer. That's who we are requiring to submit the 35%, the tax returns. Now, under those situations, there are many ways for individuals who don't want to submit tax returns to go around that definition so that they are not a backer. Because if they are not a backer, if I own, for instance, 3% in my cousin's cannabis business, technically, under the definition provided by the Public Act, I am not a backer. And not being a backer, I don't need a license to the point of investing in this cannabis industry, which means the Social Equity Council will not be requiring my tax document. And through those mechanisms and other mechanisms, there are ways for potential backers to go around and still conceal their asset. And the only person who will be losing ultimately will be the social equity applicant, because the social equity applicant will not be getting the full support that he would have been getting if the backer was not subject to this requirement. Now, some of the concerns that many members of the council have raised is tax evasion or back or social equity applicants who are being lured into deals by individuals who may have criminal conviction related to financial crime. Well, to address those, after the social equity review comes a background check. This background check is conducted by the department. This background check is conducted not by the Social Equity Council, but the Public Act 21-1 clearly says that this background check could involve a financial history check. Now, it seems that it's just more appropriate that at that point, everything, all forms of violations that are in the past of the potential backers could be revealed. I don't know the full detail about what that's gonna be, but There are two. The statute has provided resources that allow the state, if the state wants to dig into this, to be able to do so. It's just not at the social equity review level, because the social equity review is the first step in the process, actually. So I just wanted to address that, that Section 29 has clearly established uh, background check requirement that everyone applying for licensing usually go through for their licenses to be approved. So concerns of people who have been convicted of tax evasions, or those concerns should be attenuated through that background check. Now, Madam Chairwoman, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Komla, and thank you for all of that information. So I just wanted to touch on a few points. Both that reinforce exactly what you've just outlined. I think there continues to be some misunderstanding around what the Social Equity Council is responsible for, right? We verify that a social equity applicant is in fact a social equity applicant. We review workforce development plans and social equity plans. That next level of sort of determination is not what we are responsible for. The license is ultimately granted by the Department of Consumer Protection, and there is a very complex and detailed process involved in approving those applications. So that's first. To your point around the sort of the statements that were made around drug traffickers and the like, there is a comprehensive background check. While it is not meant to identify folks who have other crimes, those white collar crimes that like racketeering, the background check will sort of address that and find those things, and those people will be disqualified. That's number two. The other thing, and I'm going to make this request yet again, is that I think it would be very helpful for council members if they knew what the practices of other states were in this regard, whether or not there were other states that have required tax returns. I know Connecticut did ask for tax returns for its medical program, but that was for a very different reason. And we can certainly have our drug control director share those reasons. And then finally, I want to let, those council members who are present, as well as the public, know that there has been a significant amount of, communication to our legislators about this issue, to the extent that they were considering putting it into the bill to say the tax returns are not required. One of the reasons that they didn't was because they were concerned about the lack of a public hearing in making that determination. So I would argue that if in fact this council does not take up that issue, the legislature will when they return to session in the future. So, and I think it sends an unfortunate message about this council and its authority and its responsibility if in fact we make decisions that are then if we are not responsive to the people that we are trying to help the most, that the legislature will course correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
May
Madam
I add,
Chairwoman. Yes, please,
may I add
Council Member
something?
Jefferson.
The issue is impediment to access to capital. That's the issue we're dealing with. We cannot, as the chairwoman eloquently stated, we cannot create these impediments to access to capital, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we did actually at the last meeting of the full council. We created an impediment, and some of these issues that were raised, and I thank you, Counselor, for your examination of this entire issue and what you presented this morning. one of the other issue was that, that folks don't want to talk about. People simply just don't want to give up their tax returns. They're not Pablo Escobar. They just don't want folks to see how much money they're making. I mean, that's a legitimate reason. If a person, a young woman goes to her aunt and say, I want to borrow $250,000 to start a cannabis business, and the aunt said, no problem, here it is. And the niece says, well, I also need your tax return. That person may not want to give up the tax returns. It's just that simple. She doesn't want people in her business. I don't see why that's a crime. And so we have to be very conscious of creating these impediments, because that's one of the most difficult issues we're dealing with as a council: access to capital. And so I don't think we have a choice, Madam Chair. We have to ask for another vote. Policy has to agree to bring this before the full council at the next meeting of the full council, and make the motion for reconsideration of the vote. We have no choice, I think.
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson. Just wanted to add quickly to that point, and just some more, context, if you will. But we, at one point, we had thought we would actually call for a special meeting of the policy committee last week to discuss this issue, and with the idea of bringing it to the full council at a special meeting this week. However, there were some issues with regard to how that would affect the actual the ability of the system to accommodate changes like that before the end of this particular cycle. And I think Attorney Matravy once again had expressed that it was prudent not to, would put another way, there would not, if we were to make a change now for this cycle, there just wasn't enough time left in this cycle for a change to have any real effect. And so the idea now is for us to consider bringing this before the full council with the idea of making a change, proposing that we make this change for the next cycle, which I understand begins in July. So I'm sorry, Subira, I interrupted you.
So I totally understand everything that everyone's saying here, and I appreciate the sentiment around the role of the Social Equity Council. And I am one of those on the side of we should, like, I am not okay with people not disclosing their information, but given the charge of the council, and I think what was missing from the last conversation was the vetting process, which I think I'm understanding a little bit more here, that while it's not the council's responsibility to vet backers, there is a process through which backers will be vetted through DCP and through the licensing process. And I wholeheartedly agree that access to capital is a big issue, but I also think it is our responsibility to ensure that we are creating access, so we're not putting people in situations where they are making bad business deals to get ahead. So I say that to say, like, I completely understand the sentiment that it is not the council's responsibility to determine eligibility of backers. So I guess a question I have is like, how did we end up here? Did we as the council make the decision to require tax returns for backers and we're now trying to reverse that decision? Or was that like, I think that's the piece of it that I'm a little confused about is the statute didn't require it. Did we inadvertently make that decision and we need to reverse it, which I'm fine with, but I'm a little hesitant about setting precedent that we're making bad decisions that we then have to reverse because we didn't have all of the information. I guess that's just my 2 comments. And I think given all that I've heard today, I'm comfortable voting yes to bring this to the full council. And as you guys know, I was a no vote because I also think we did not have not that we didn't have all of the information. I think it felt like there was going to be a situation where people were not going to be properly vetted. And I think the way it's explained here today just provides a little bit more clarity to me that makes me comfortable to switch my vote from a no to a yes.
Thank you. And let me just add, Sabira, that I think that one of the, and I have to take full responsibility for that. When I brought the motion to the full board, I did not bring forward the full discussion to the council that we had at the policy committee level. And I think there may have been some a feeling that we had not thoroughly vetted this issue, when in fact we had. And you know, it's not that everything was we were 100% comfortable. It's just that the weighing the pros and cons of inclusion of tax returns, we came out feeling that it's better not to, because it's such an impediment and because it has limited, if any, value to us as a social equity council, that we would remove it. And I don't think that was that I delivered that with the, you know, properly. And so we're hoping that we can do that for this coming, the meeting, either the next meeting or the one thereafter. I'm not sure what schedule it'll be on, but in time to have it removed by the next cycle. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
Through
Chairman.
you, yes, through you, Chairman Shirley. So a couple of things. First of all, I appreciate you taking responsibility, but I also think that, you know, we are a body of folks who are, you know, for all intents and purposes, relatively new to this legislation just passed. This is a process that is very complicated and complex. And so, you know, I also think that in terms of the documentation that was required, the documentation required for ownership and control, residency and income were all listed out. It was voted on and approved by this entire council with the exception of our newer members. So this was something that was added to the list. I think that we were trying to ensure exactly what Councilwoman Gordon was saying, was that we had significant documentation to sort of ensure, you know, best intentions. But we are learning as we go. And we have learned from potential applicants that this is a significant barrier in terms of access to capital. So are we going to have all of the information right at the onset? No, we're not. But that's why having feedback from those who are going to be participating in this market and who are going to be impacted by this market, hearing from them is important, and being willing to be agile and nimble and course correct when necessary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. Any other comments on this issue? Any questions?
Yeah, I did, Kevin Wolf. I did have a question, and I don't want to belabor the point because I am in agreement after doing some research with the help of council members. I guess the question was, just for my own edification, where in the process was the tax returns required? Was it before license or in order to get the license?
Councilman Walton, currently, the tax return is being required before they get the license. At the social equity review, that's where we're requiring the tax returns.
Okay. All right. And I asked that because I had a conversation with someone who was in the process, and I think that was the frustration. Was the general sense was people weren't necessarily, number one, to Mr. Jefferson, to Councilman Jefferson's point, like people didn't necessarily want to give up the tax return, but it was even before saying, why am I giving you my tax return before I even know you have a license? Right.
Exactly.
Instead of saying
Right.
maybe it's contingent upon getting the license if you show the tax return. But I am, and after all this conversation, I am in agreement that perhaps there are other ways to vet backers.
Great, right. And we also heard yesterday from Director Marriott, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. He had a conflict, but this was part of a discussion we had with our accounting firm, CohnReznick, and I'll take the risk of summarizing his statement. He was in favor of removing this requirement from our from the necessary requirements to be presented by backers. He did mention that, as Madam Chair said, there was some requirement for that from medical marijuana providers, but it was for a very specific reason. Because it was medicine, there was an extra layer of security, because these were entities that were providing vital medicinal products to the public, and that they couldn't get anywhere else. And so that was the requirement there. Of course, this does not, we don't have that kind of threshold with regard to adult use recreational cannabis. So still another reason to remove it, as it is an impediment, and with very limited value to us as a council. So at this point, I don't think we're not required to vote on this issue at this point.
I'd like to make a motion that we
Councilman Jefferson, yes?
we bring, yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I like to make a motion that we bring it before the full council in the motion for reconsideration. The sooner the better, I think. I just think it's important that we do this. We correct the error.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Correct the error as soon as possible, and let's have it ready for the next cycle.
So it's been properly, can I get a second to that?
I'll second.
So we have a motion that has been seconded that we remove the requirement for federal tax return from backers in time for the next cycle. So it will still be in place for
Actually,
this cycle.
excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, my motion is to request a motion for reconsideration at the full council.
Got it. Yeah.
So that we reverse the decision that we made at the last full council meeting. Because that's the issue. The issue is the removal of the federal tax returns, and the council voted not to do it, and I want to reverse that, basically.
Got it. So the motion is to bring before the full council a reconsideration of the previous vote such that
That's exactly it.
um, may I get a, it's been moved and seconded. So all those, are there any questions? Not all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Are there any opposed or abstentions? Great, so it's been properly, it's been moved that we will now bring this issue for reconsideration to the full council in time, as soon as possible, but certainly in time for the change to be made for the next cycle. Is that appropriate, Madam Chair?
It is, so we can just make sure that it is added to the May meeting agenda, so that it can be considered at that time. And to the extent that there is, aside from you outlining this conversation and previous conversations, any documentation that we can put together to provide for the council members in advance that clearly sort of outlines the discussion and the request for reconsideration, I think would be helpful.
Great. All right, and I think Attorney Matravy is in the process of doing that, and do we now have the memo? You have the memo.
I have the memo already. I just need to email it to everybody.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we will get that memo out to the full council with the idea of bringing it to the at the May meeting, having a discussion on reconsideration and hopefully a vote that will remove this impediment from the required documents.
And
All
and
right.
through you, Mr. Chair, another matter I just want to bring to your attention. I'm not too sure if it even makes sense for us to have a full scale discussion about it if Attorney Matravy is going to present his memo. We've had this discussion again. This is the second time policy has gone over it, and folks who the minutes are made available to folks. I don't see why, in the interest of time, why we have to explain all of this again. I like to have the motion put forth, any discussion based on the information that is out there, including the memo that will be sent by our attorney, and that should be the end of that discussion, and we should move forward with the vote. I just don't want to I don't think it's prudent for us to have another full scale discussion about this.
Okay, and so we will just
That's just my thoughts. I'm sorry.
but I'm thinking then that what will go on the agenda is a vote for reconsideration. Well, I guess that would be beyond a vote to remove it, right? I mean, that's what we really after.
Well, it's a
To
request to
remove it.
reconsider the vote since it was already voted on.
I see.
So
Okay.
that would be the motion to reconsider and approve the removal of the tax return requirement.
Reconsideration and approval to remove it. Okay. All right. Well, I think that concludes any other discussions, any other things we want to bring before the policy committee? Director Clay, is there anything else we need to discuss on this issue?
There isn't. Thank you.
Okay. If so, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So move. Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. We are adjourned, and thank you very much, and appreciate this.
Thank you
Yep.
all.
Have a nice day.
Thank you,
you
Chairman
all.
Shirley.
Have a nice,
Thank you.
thank you.